Hello everyone and welcome to our talk. We can see some attendees now popping up, the little dots at the side, which is absolutely lovely. Before we properly get started and whilst we wait for everyone to join, we would absolutely love it if you could just open the chat box and let us know where you're listening in from today, perhaps your language combinations and anything interesting you'd like to share with us. But we'd love to know where you're listening from. I'm down in the southwest and I think so is Claire. So both UK based today. Well, I can see lots of people popping in now. 62.
If you're wondering where the chat box is, it's along the bottom. On my screen, you have to click a more button and then it pops up. And then you can also leave your questions and answers, but we'll cover that a bit later. But just use the chat to have a little chat with all the other people who are joining us today.
Absolutely. Amazing. We've got a message from Carrie saying that she's in Geneva and you're a third year British student and a year abroad studying German, French, translation and interpreting. Amazing. Hopefully we'll have some good material for you today. Oh wow, so many things popping up. So we've got Eleanor in Birmingham, Alison also in the southwest, Helen in Rugby, Danielle in London. Wow, Angelica also listening from England, and you're offering English, Spanish and Polish. So mostly UK based so far, I think, which is interesting.
There's somebody from Hertfordshire, ex-project manager looking to start freelance. That's a really good place to be starting from.
Brilliant.
Somebody in Brighton,
someone else
doing their
Hampshire.
MA. Right. Oh, Malaysia.
Ooh.
Brilliant.
Oh wow.
Welcome.
That's brilliant. We'll just give it a couple more minutes. Another person from the University of Surrey, amazing. Ricky from London, looking to get into freelance translation after a career break. Also a great place to be starting.
Yeah, we'll just give it a minute and then we will get started. We know that you know, you're waiting for the others talking, but there's a few people still coming in, so we'll just let them join in. There's somebody from West London, Anna, hello, you've worked as a PM, project manager in the language industry for years, thinking about going into freelance translation. Please do. We need all these translators coming through.
Oh, the University of Surrey seems to be really well represented today. I've seen quite a few people popping up from there.
Ah, and there's Anna from Bath. Hello, Anna. Newly graduated English to Swedish. So I hope we can be useful for you today, Anna.
Yeah, hi, Nadine in Hertfordshire, or recently completed your MA. And Jazz working for the MOD, amazing. Right, so I think we will get started now and sort of come and go as we have time. So Olivia, really happy to be presenting with Claire. We'd just like to welcome you to the Language Show, which is apparently the UK's #1 event for language learners, language teachers and everyone who loves languages, which hopefully is an absolutely brilliant place for us to share a few ideas about getting started as a translator and developing your career in translation and really how to take those daunting first steps. There are over 80 talks and 80 sessions, so there's such a rich programme of events for you to sort of dip in and out of over the event. We'll hopefully be really drilled down on how to start a career as a freelance translator. Please do keep popping anything you'd like to share with us in the chat box, but we just ask you if you have questions to post them as we're talking, but please do post them in the Q&A. So you can also find that by clicking on the bottom panel where it says more and there's 3 dots, but just the Q&A, not the chat. Then hopefully they won't sort of get lost in the large chat and we'll be able to find them at the end when we come to our question session. Yes, it's been amazing to see where you're all listening in from this morning, and yeah, quite daunting. So I'm hoping I do kind of feel the pressure now to make sure that we do come up with some really, really good material that will get you started in your careers. So we'll be covering things like changing your mindset from being mostly a linguist to also being a business person. We'll be talking about specialising and how and why to do that, how to market yourself as a freelance translator, and also kind of developing a career further down the line. there will be an opportunity to ask questions. So yeah, just keep popping those questions in there. As I said, I'm Olivia and I'm a freelance translator. I specialise in a few different fields. So I work quite a bit in jewellery, precious metals, precious stones, and luxury goods. I also really like working in kind of marketing and corporate communications projects, and also for projects in the pet industry. I do have quite a wide experience in a few different fields, including working for a firm of notaries and a firm of trademark and patent attorneys. Over the time, what I found I really enjoy is basically translating marketing content, something that requires a really excellent understanding of the original German and quite a creative approach to giving the content the intended effect in English. So I think I really enjoy using my creativity in terms of actually creating language in my role. So I predominantly offer German to English. I studied German and Russian at St Andrews and became a freelance translator on a full-time basis in 2018, and also added the diploma in translation to my qualifications recently. Yeah, I'm really excited to be talking with Claire today. So Claire's the director of Atlas Translations, which is a language services agency offering a variety of services, including translation and interpreting. Over to you, Claire.
Thanks, Olivia. So yes, I am Claire Sutty. I'm from Atlas Translations, and we are a language service provider. So clients come to us when they need translation services, and we work with freelance translators and interpreters. We're very keen to spread the word about languages, so we've attended the language show in the past physically in the olden days before the you-know-what. So we like giving talks. We go into schools, universities, we host school placements. We also have paid internships. We're very active on LinkedIn and social media. So LinkedIn is a really good place to find us and find out more about us. You're very welcome to find me as well and connect up with me there after this presentation if you feel it would be useful. So you might be thinking, well, why are you here? Because you're not a translator. How are you going to help me? So I'm not a translator, but I have been doing this for 30 years. I started Atlas in 1991. And every day I see CVs from translators and interpreters who are all brilliantly qualified, have some of them great experience also, but they don't always present themselves in the best possible way. And I think that's particularly difficult when you're starting out, because you feel like you've just got this blank piece of paper in front of you and you don't know what to put in it. So I think that although I'm not a translator, I have a lot to contribute to this kind of conversation, and I really enjoy it. I do CV clinics and I help people at all stages of their career, whether it's at the beginning or sort of 20 years down the line. So I'm going to try and give you some tips, what to think about when you're planning your CV and your marketing, and how to make yourself stand out for all the right reasons. So I suppose I'd start with asking you, what's your approach? Who do you want to work with, and how are you going to present yourself? So most of you will be saying, well, a CV, an online profile, that's what I really need to perfect. So, but you also need to change your mindset a bit. So I'm seeing obviously that a lot of you are coming from an education. So you've done a master's, or you're finishing your master's at the moment. You've got a degree in translation studies. Maybe you're coming from a different career, and that's fine too, and you want to move into freelancing. But you need to change your sort of mindset. And I begin to sound a bit zen when I talk about this, but to be the translator, you have to think like the translator. So how you present yourself is really important, because people are going to be making very quick judgments about you. You would love them, wouldn't you, to just be reading every bit of your CV and finding out all those little details about you, but they're not going to do that. So you need to change from being a student or a linguist to being a professional business person, somebody who's running a business and who is a qualified professional translator or interpreter. So this is quite difficult, especially for students, because if you've just done your MA, that's the biggest thing in your life. It's really impressive. You've worked so hard to do it, so you want to tell everybody about it, and it might be the first thing you put on your CV. But when you think about your prospective employer, that's not necessarily the most important thing for them. And that's, sorry about that, I know it's a bit heartbreaking. but they want to know why they should choose you when there's lots of other people. So you need to stand out, and that's where the marketing comes in. And there's also phrases that I see people using, such as I'm just starting out, or I've recently qualified. And those things just single you out as somebody with no experience, even though you might have some, even though you have got something to offer these people. So don't say that. You're not lying about anything. You're just not standing up and going, hello, I've just started, because that's not going to help you get chosen. So you want to instead present yourself as, I'm a professional translator, I'm a qualified interpreter. So using those terms about being professional and qualified will really help you to stand out, and they give a very strong message to the person looking at your information. The next thing is what you put on your CV. Quite often people don't know what to put. Generally when I dig around in people's backgrounds, I'll find lots of information about specific skills that they might have, that they're bringing from another career, or even from jobs that they've done when they're studying, where they've had to meet deadlines, where they've done voluntary translation and interpreting. Lose the word voluntary or unpaid in any experience that you have, because it doesn't matter to your clients, it's still experience. So that's a good way to showcase it if you do have that experience. And you need to plan. I'm racing through this because I'm very aware of the clock, and I'm running out of time on this section. So you do need to think about yourself as a business, and you need to plan in that you're not just going to send out your CV to hundreds of people and overnight you're going to become a translator extraordinaire with hundreds of customers queuing up to give you work. So you're going to have to make a bit of a plan, work out who you want to market yourself to. So Olivia will talk a bit about specialising, whether you do or whether you don't, whether you want to work with agencies, whether you want to focus on direct clients, whether you're thinking about people in the UK or in different countries. Get your materials ready, and that will be your CV, and that will feed beautifully into your LinkedIn profile and a website if you decide to have one, although that's not essential. That's very much a matter of choice and time and budget. So thinking about that, how you're going to market yourself, you think you're just going to do it now, but that is an ongoing process. And in 5 years' time, you will still be looking for new clients, because you'll always want to be working up and working for different people, replacing maybe clients that don't pay you so well. So this is an ongoing process, and it's good to get it right at the beginning. So you want personal applications. You want to stand out from the many, many dozens of emails that we get every day from people offering translation services. I can tell you it's very unusual to get a personal approach. So it really works. When we get something in the office, we all talk about it. We say, look, this is how brilliant. So find 5 companies, 10 companies a day that you'd really like to work with. Research them. Find a person who works there, maybe. Have a little lurk on LinkedIn and find out something about them. Maybe they like sausage dogs, like Olivia, or maybe they drink lots of tea, like me. These are all things you can find out about me quite easily. I have chickens. I live in Devon. I went to Newcastle. I used to live in Cambridge. You can quite often find a link with somebody that's a nice sort of hook to get them interested and make them feel obliged to look at your details. So you want to stand out. That does mean a really good CV as well behind you, and I can talk about that a little bit more later. But go small and personal rather than a massive scattergun approach. So it's really better to do really good quality, outstanding applications one at a time than send out a blanket impersonal letter that everyone can see you've sent to hundreds of agencies and stand out. So yeah, research, work out a connection, how you can help the people, and make it very short, personal, to the point. I'm going to hand over now to Olivia, because I don't want to hog this seminar, but she's going to talk a little bit about specialisms and developing those.
That's some great advice. Thank you, Claire. I have no idea how you guessed it, like sausage dogs. It's almost like I'm wearing it on my person. So I'm going to talk a little bit about specialisms for translators. And basically the question I'm trying to answer is, should you specialise and how? So there are different strategies for kind of choosing a niche. And it can seem a bit opaque when translators say which areas they specialise in, and you think, wow, that can sound like a lifetime's work in itself, and it can be. So I think you do have to be strategic about it. So I've broken down a few different ways in which you might like to choose a niche. So one might be strategic. So have you noticed you've got some skills, or you would like to acquire some skills that you think other translators have kind of overlooked? Have you identified an industry that's growing? Do you already have contacts in an industry? Or kind of, like Claire said, a hook, which might be a good starting point for a particular area of specialism. It might also be predominantly financial. So do you think one area of translation will be better paid than another? So just to put it really generally, maybe commercial translation over literary translation. Or do you feel one area might offer you more work for clients than another area? You could also base your decision on previous experience. So have you got lots of experience in law or engineering or chemistry or pharmacy or HR? That is something you might be able to leverage to your advantage, but you do also need to really enjoy what you do. So if you have left another field for a very specific reason and don't actually enjoy working on that kind of content, then don't feel obliged to choose a field you dislike, because it is really important that you are passionate about what you do. Which brings me on to the next aspect of this, which it could be purpose-driven or passion-driven. So you might be passionate about literature, you might want to help charities or NGOs, you might want to focus on making reliable information available in the kind of era of disinformation. You might be really passionate about healthcare or education. You might want to make more literature available in a declining language. So also you could look into a specialism in an area that you're already interested in, already passionate about, or you're already involved in your spare time. So it might also be more location driven. So if you have access to lots of local clients, for example, if you're an English translator based in Zurich, or perhaps a Polish translator living in the UK, you may have access to more local clients. And then the advantage of that would, of course, be that you can meet them in person and you can establish a relationship, and that might be a great way of sort of starting out down that path. It can be easier to establish a rapport with people that you can actually also meet in person, but it's not impossible the other way around. And I think there are lots of ways around this, particularly like we're demonstrating right now. So many events have kind of stayed virtual and stayed hybrid in the post-COVID, but not quite post-COVID world. When you're starting out and you're worried about not having enough work, choosing a niche can be quite daunting, because it really does seem like you're limiting the amount of work you could potentially get. And I think I've got a couple of arguments against this. So if you decide to join a professional organisation, for example, the Institute of Translation and Interpreting, in their professional code of conduct, they say members shall refuse work that they know to be beyond their competence, either linguistically or because of lack of specialised knowledge. So there is no law in saying you can't take on work outside your area of specialism, but you just need to be suitably skilled in any field that you work in. I think Claire and I were discussing this, and there definitely is some benefit to working as a generalist and kind of exploring different fields, because this is one way of really finding out what you do enjoy, which fields are able to offer you enough work, which fields you're efficient at, which fields, you just are talented at, essentially, as well. But I think that when Claire says about standing out from the crowd and being personal and establishing this connection, having a niche is one really, really good way of kind of going down, so that when you target agencies and direct clients, you really are a specialist. And I think if you can be seen as a specialist and extra value, you can, generally speaking, perhaps command higher rates, which is also useful, perhaps over and above a generalist. When it comes to the question of will there be enough work for me, it depends on your language combination, of course, but I mean, the short answer is yes. So if you decide to specialise in construction, apparently their annual turnover in Germany is about 307 billion. It's quite a lot of work. Obviously, that's not all directly related to translation, but there are obviously in each industry a very large amount of companies and individuals who do have translation requirements and international business requirements. So essentially, if you're good at what you do and you don't mind shouting about that, there is a lot of work out there. So the global languages services industry apparently had a market of $6.6 billion in 2021, which is obviously vast. Another aspect of choosing a niche is kind of perhaps orientating it to professionals you work with and are good at establishing a relationship with. So it kind of really feel that you're attending events and potentially in person and chatting to people about. So you don't really necessarily want to become an engineering translator if the idea of talking to engineers about engineering makes you want to cry. But also kind of try to be realistic. So unless you come from another professional field or have alternative qualifications, becoming an expert in some of these areas really tough times work. So I think it's also important to kind of be realistic about the areas you choose and the time you are able and willing to invest in that. Just for some food for thought, really, when we were preparing some of this material, we did chat to some other translators about their specialisms, and there's just such a broad variety of people, businesses, and interests out there. So I spoke to someone who had studied English and French law and essentially followed that path on through her career as a legal translator, and spoke to somebody who essentially defined their specialisms based on what demand he felt was coming from agencies, and that ended up actually in his case being sort of medicine and health and social care, which was less shaped by his educational background and more by opportunities. Spoke to someone else who specializes in e-commerce, and again that was based on a previous career. Quite a few people have said their specialism happened purely by chance, and that was someone else who specializes in medical and health, and she basically fell into that field, found she really enjoyed it, found there was a lot of demand and carried on. And I spoke to someone else who wanted to specialize in international development, that absolutely always loved that field and did commit to that and now specializes in that field. There are a few other translators that I can think of who specialize in sort of sports and football translation, which again comes from hobbies, interests, and passions. There's often the same with translators who specialize in tourism. Perhaps they love traveling, visiting new places, and enjoy reading that content anyway, and then find themselves well placed to help other people work on such content. Again, I can think of a translator who's really interested in wine, so she decided to specialize in the wine industry, providing translations to her direct clients in the wine industry. Now, when people talk about translating specialisms as a translator, I think that sometimes people focus on the subject fields too much. And if you're coming to the industry from an MA, you may have, say, 2 or 3 source languages, and you may find that you're stronger or weaker in certain source languages. I think you'd be unlikely to perhaps have the same standard in all of them. And I think it's also worthwhile saying that you can specialize in a particular language if you find that there is either more work, or your skills are better, or you enjoy working with a particular language more, or perhaps it commands better rates. So you don't necessarily just have to niche down in terms of the subject area. You could also say, well, I really enjoy working with, perhaps French commands better rates than, for example, just completely making this up, but Arabic. So you may also want to niche down in that regard. So I specialize in providing German to English translation, but I do also offer some Russian to English on a kind of selective basis on projects that I really want to work on. So I've definitely done that in my career too. And I'll pass over now to Claire to give us an overview of some ways in which you can make all of these specialisms and qualifications really stand out on your CV.
Okay, thanks, Olivia. That's a big ask there. But yes, I've only got 5 minutes or so, so I can't cover all my tips, but I'm just going to try and pass on a few small tips which might seem very simple, but they are quite effective in getting you noticed. So we know there's this thing about first impression, I've mentioned it already, but we know that we have a really short time. I think research suggests 6 to 8 seconds when somebody opens your CV and has a look, that they're going to decide whether they like it or not, and whether they want to work with you or not. So, and we're also up against the squirrel factor, which is that people are very easily distracted. So they're at work, they open your CV, and an email pings in and a squirrel goes past and you've lost them. So you've got to stand out. You've got that very, very short time. And that's really frustrating because you've got lots to say. You've got your qualifications, you're getting your experience, and you need to say that really effectively. And that is difficult in itself because we're very good at talking about other companies, translating materials for other people and making them sound fantastic. But when it comes to ourselves, we're not necessarily as good at that. So we write for a living, but not necessarily about ourselves. So we need to blow our own trumpets. No, I haven't missed something out. So colour, photo, logo is my next section. So having colour in your CV, I think really brings it alive. Whether you use your own photograph is up to you. With interpreters, I quite often see photographs of the person sitting in a booth with their headphones on, microphone, and it just brings it to life a bit. You want a reasonably professional photograph, not ideally one that's, you know, you at a wedding holding a glass of champagne or something, and don't use one where you've just got your MA and you're throwing your hat in the air, just because it makes you look like a student, which you don't want to present as a student anymore. So just a nice clean photograph of you, and have it on all your materials. So you'll have it on your CV, but also on your LinkedIn profile and any other online presence that you decide to have. And then wherever the person sees you, they're going to start to recognize you. And you might decide to have a logo. And again, this is part of your business. If you're thinking, I'm in this for the long haul, then it can look really nice and professional if you have a logo. And you can do this yourself now using tools like Canva, or you might have a friend who's a designer who can help you with it. And it can just make you look, it makes you stand out. Have a look at other people's profiles. You know, you can look on LinkedIn and see what people are doing with their banners in the background and with colour and logos. And people are really creative and clever, and it really works. So take a look and think about how you can do that with yours. Because you want the recipient to open that CV and find out what you do very quickly. Use lots of bullet points, lots of white space. You don't want it to read like an essay. So we get lots of CVs where people have tried to fit lots of information into 1 page or 2 pages. I generally recommend 2 as a standard length. And they've squashed it all in. It's really small fonts, it's really cramped, and it's really uninviting. And you just sort of, you lose, we're easily distracted, we're off, you haven't caught my attention at all. So instead, lots of space, really clear, use colour. Now, onto my tips. I would say the file name. So this sounds really obvious, but we get lots of CVs that are just called cv.doc. So instead, use your name, because that's your first opportunity of getting your name in front of somebody, because you want them to remember your name so the next time they need a translator. It might not be today, might not be tomorrow, it might be next week, next month. They're going to remember your name, but also what it is that you do. So before they've opened the CV, they know you've got Olivia Morton, German to English translator, Claire Sutty, English to French interpreter, whatever it is, get that in there. And then you've got their interest. If they happen to be looking for a German to English translator, they're going to open it and they're ready to look at it. You've piqued their interest already. Then when they open up the CV, you want to have a nice clear header. So you want that in big letters, again, with your name, and then what it is that you're doing. Olivia Morton, German to English translator. Olivia will be using all her post-nominals for her qualifications. So she's got her memberships, any postgraduate qualifications, she's got her DIP trans, so she's going to be using that. For agencies, they know what those mean. Obviously, if you're working directly with clients, you might need to sort of clarify those. You can also use logos. So if you're a member of ITI, you can put their logo in there, and again, that's a bit of colour. But again, then you want that header on each. If you've got your 2 pages, you want it at the top of each page. So whenever they're looking through your CV, they're reminded who you are and what it is that you're doing. So you're making it really easy for them, and you're keeping their attention. Beyond that, you want them to know what it is that you're doing, what you're offering them, and you need to make that very clear. So generally you'll have a profile, and most people do put some sort of little introduction about them. So what you don't want to be saying, as we said before, is that you've just recently qualified, you're a student, you're desperate for work, you want to get started. Scrap all of that and present yourself as a professional, translator with qualifications, focus on all the good things, how you're used to working to tight deadlines, use an example of a job that you've done that might be relevant to that, blog writing, voluntary work, or something that you've done that you can put in. And something else that works well here is a testimonial. So if you've done some work for somebody and they've written you a really lovely testimonial or a reference, you can use some text there from that, because sometimes reading what someone else has put about you is much more effective than what you can write yourself. So the value of references and testimonials not to be underestimated. And it can be a good filler as well if you feel like you haven't got a lot else to say. It's going to fill up a bit of space. Beyond that, you want to have your languages clearly listed. As Olivia said, if you've got more than two source language or more than one source language, you can list them all there, so it's clear. Your specialist areas, the software that you have, and then your relevant experience. So I'm afraid your education is going to be on the next page, quite potentially. So you're making it very, very clear to the client, this is who I am, this is what I do, I've got these tools to help me use it. If you're using Trados, again, that's another opportunity to put a logo in. So when the client is reading it, that pops out at them. And if they know they only ever work with translators who use Trados, then you're ticking that box for them, making it very, very easy. So I think I'm quite aware that I want to leave time for questions because I can see that they are coming through. So I'll just say I do a CV clinic, which is for a charitable donation, but there's loads of information on our website about things to do with your CV. So if you're interested, drop me a message on LinkedIn and I can send you the link so that you don't have to spend ages looking for it on our website. But please ask lots of questions. I think I am now going to hand over to Olivia for a last little bit about marketing yourself as a freelance translator.
Okay, thank you, Claire. So yeah, I think when it comes to marketing yourself as a freelance translator, the first, perhaps potentially obvious, but really important thing to mention is that regardless of the legal structure of your business, so whether you're going to be a sole or a limited company or have a different form in a different country, you are running a business and you are providing a professional service. You're responsible for getting your customers and your work, so you do need to do some marketing. So I suppose the first step of how to market yourself is really recognizing that you do need to do that as a freelancer. In that regard, it's very much not a 9-to-5, and that gives you so much more autonomy and freedom, I would say, than being an employee. And that can be both good and bad at different times, and depending on your personality and how you like to work. This kind of role offers you flexible working hours, flexibility to fit your work in around your life and your life in around your work, but ultimately more responsibility, and it can be harder to switch off from that. So I definitely bury your head in the sand when it comes to business matters, your taxes and things like that. Try to do some learning and try to pick up some business skills. You're no longer just a linguist, but so as Julie Jenner put it really well in her book entitled Entrepreneurial Linguist, you are essentially an entrepreneurial linguist rather than just a linguist now. So yeah, pick up those business skills, do some reading, follow the relevant people on social media, business news, keep yourself informed. And the next step is really then to build your service portfolio. I've just seen someone posting in the chat saying the sound quality is a bit dodgy, so I'm going to stop my video a second. You can also build your service portfolio next. So essentially you need to decide what services to offer. You might want to offer translation, transcreation, proofreading, editing, urgent work, transcription, subtitling, DTP. You don't have to offer everything, so really do play to your strengths there. Build your skills and learn everything you need to know before you offer something like subtitling, and really just be honest with your clients about where your skill set lies. Something else that's quite important to think about is, are you a freelance translator or are you a freelance linguist? So there are loads of niches beyond just translation. You could be a freelance project manager. And remember that you can reinvent yourself and not to feel too much pressure to stay in the same niche for your entire career. So I was speaking to a translator the other day who's further on in his career, and he specializes in finance, and said that he's reinvented himself numerous times in terms of specialisms and in terms of whether he works in-house or as a freelancer. So when you're building your service portfolio, just really think what you enjoy. What is your communication style geared towards? What makes you light up? What makes you unique? And essentially, that's what's going to make you stand out. And the next step down the marketing pathway is probably getting comfortable with sales. So there's a really broad variety of routes into translation. You might have had a career break. You might be changing career. You could be a language graduate. You could be a lawyer linguist. You could not have a degree. One common route is for language graduates, and my experience is that many people who've kind of come from that humanities background, can feel a bit icky or uncomfortable about sales and selling their services. And I think that's something that's really, really important to get your head around and feel comfortable with, especially if you've been employed for a longer period of time in a role where you're not really responsible for sales. You don't need to be icky or pushy about it, but you do need to be able to confidently tell people what you do, why you're good at it, and how you can help them. And if that doesn't come naturally, it's not all over, because you can definitely develop that skill at a later stage. Just going to pop my video back on and see if everyone's happy with that. So when it comes to marketing, you might want to do some location independent marketing. So a website, social media presence, as Claire mentioned, applying to agencies online, networking with direct clients in your specialist field. I would say being active on social media is really great, but potentially it might be worth considering that your website could well be the primary hub that you direct people to, as ultimately that's the domain that you own and the domain that you're fully in charge of. And I think considering marketing your translation business as an ongoing process that will improve over time is also important. Trying to learn to market your skills and experience the best effect. So feel free to try things, and if they don't work, you learn from them and you move on. So some more things to think about, or people talk about sort of USPs, so unique selling points, quite a bit. When you're marketing yourself, try to think what makes you different, what makes you stand out and unique, what makes people remember you. Claire remembers me because I like sausage dogs. I haven't actually worked for Claire, but if I had, I'd like to think she'd remember me because I'm an excellent translator, but she remembers me because I like sausage dogs. Make sure you join the ITI and CIOL and any professional networks in your country, because that can be a really useful way to get started. But just being a member, just paying a membership in and of itself won't really do anything other than give you kind of professional kudos and maybe that status, but really getting involved, getting to know the other translators and the other professionals in the industry and establishing a network will. So it's really what you make out of these organizations rather than just simply kind of paying a member. I think as well as being really useful for marketing, there is another element to that because, most translators do work from home. So there can be a bit of an element of kind of isolation. So connecting with other humans in that regard can be super beneficial and just really enjoyable. One thing that increasingly comes up is that referrals can be an excellent source of work. So be careful about considering other translators as competition. Ultimately, there is so much work and enough to go around for those who are good. So try to be helpful to your colleagues, and a lot of the time that will come back to you and your colleagues will be helpful to you. Before you go spending great amounts of money and effort on your marketing, be helpful to your existing clients and make sure that you add value to them. So you can acquire new clients all over the place, but make sure you look after your existing clients. It's one of those a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush type scenarios where, as business people, we do really need to focus on customer service and making sure both we and our clients are happy. Another good book in this regard is Corinne McKay's Finding and Marketing to Translation Agencies. Like Claire said, keep in touch with your clients, ask them for testimonials, ask them for reviews when they're happy. There's no harm in asking, and lots of them might say yes. When you market yourself, it can be tricky to know what about rates, and you do need to decide how much money you're going to charge. And I think we can get so tied up in what other translators might charge and panicking about this, but a really good way of looking at it, I think, is what annual or monthly salary, if you're going to look at it like that, do I need or want to earn? And you can kind of break that down to derive a monthly, hourly or daily rate from that. You can also figure out how many hours you can work or how many hours you want to work, and essentially that gives you your hourly rate or your daily rate. A good way of also figuring out the amount of charges is also figuring out roughly how many words you can translate in an hour, although obviously bear in mind that that can fluctuate massively, and that can give you a per word rate from your hourly rate. And if you're offered a per word rate and you think, wow, that sounds really, really low, but you don't know if it's too low, you can, calculate what that would extrapolate to when it comes to your daily rate or your annual rate, and if you can live on that, or more importantly, if you want to. So it really is about because also bear in mind that not all of the hours you spend working on your business will be kind of billable hours. So yeah, you do need to kind of factor in time for your marketing and the hours spent sort of working on your business rather than in your business, as well as covering costs for CPD, traveling to conferences, marketing, professional memberships, professional indemnity insurance, and all of that needs to come out of your earnings as well. So obviously make sure to charge accordingly. One last quick thing to mention in this regard is, often people talk about the kind of downward pressure on rates. That sounds a bit bleak at first glance. You kind of think about, perhaps the threat of machine translation. But I think if we go back to, finding a niche and adding value to your clients and to your service, that is essentially how you can differentiate yourself from your competition, but also from, machines, by providing that expertise, that added value, that kind of cultural understanding and competence that is where most of us really shine. Yeah, so thank you very much for listening to us today. I feel like we've done a bit of a whirlwind tour of, whistle-stop tour, sorry, of careers as a freelance translator. But we'll move on to the Q&A now. So please, if any more questions are popping into your head, please pop them in the Q&A. As Claire mentioned, please do feel free to also find either of us on LinkedIn or drop us an email if you have any more questions. Yeah, so I'll just work from the top on the Q&A. So Eleanor's asking, hello, for me, social media is really important for freelancing and keeping in touch with a network of translators events. With the future of Twitter in the balance, what other platforms do you think are good for translators? Now, I've been talking for quite a while now, which I appreciate is a bit boring. So I'll pass over to Claire, if Claire's happy to help with that one.
Yeah, I think it's really choose the one that you enjoy. I think there's a translator community on each one, and there's also an opportunity to find clients on each one. And it's not realistic to think that you're going to cover all of them. So choose the one that you enjoy. I know a lot of people obviously are leaving Twitter at the moment for reasons we won't go into. But we find that LinkedIn is a place where a lot of businesses are hanging out and are looking for translators as well. So it's a really good place to be found. And that's all about having a good profile. And again, it's all about having under your name, there's a bit of a headline. And I quite often see people have just put freelance translator. That doesn't tell anybody what it is that you do. So you don't want to put freelance translator. You want to say, I'm a German to English medical translator and interpreter, or whatever it is that you do, because then when your potential client is searching for those terms, and our clients are getting much more sophisticated about how they search and how they use these platforms, then you're much more likely to pop up. And you can also use hashtags and all sorts of things about the types of businesses that you want to follow and that you want to be involved in. You don't have to post anything. It's okay to lurk on LinkedIn and to stalk people there. That is acceptable if you're stalking them for commercial reasons, obviously. That is fine. You don't have to think of amazing posts to write every day. You don't have to write anything at all if you're not comfortable doing that. And in fact, that's what the majority of people on LinkedIn do. So that would be my sort of suggestion. But if you're more comfortable on a different platform, then use that to your advantage.
Yeah, definitely. I don't personally use Instagram, but I know that there is a community of translators on Instagram as well, for example, and that can really be based on your specialist field or your niche. So there's definitely some argument there for sort of going where your clients are and also trying different platforms, seeing what you enjoy.
Yeah, we had a client yesterday from Instagram, so which I never would have, I wouldn't have thought so. I imagine it for completely different industries. But yeah, wherever you think your clients aren't hanging out, they probably are, I think is the answer.
Good point. And then Danielle asked, which subject areas and language combinations do you see growth in at the moment?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think translation, as Olivia said, it's just everywhere. There is a lot of work, and that means we need lots of translators. There's a problem in the UK in education and languages, which I get very passionate about. I've got children as well at schools, and I see how awful the language provision is. But I would say German to English is going to be a massive problem in the future, because people just aren't learning German in the UK anymore. They're going in for other languages, which is great if they do any languages at all. So German to English, definitely. But depending which company you ask, will all say different things. So there's plenty of work for everybody. Obviously, some languages are more sort of unusual and exotic than others. So it really does depend. I can't comment for every single language combination, but if you want to approach me directly afterwards, I'm happy to give you some advice based on the languages that you're offering.
Yeah, I'm happy to discuss subject areas a bit more afterwards as well. So we have another question from Tolly. I absolutely adore everything to do with language, but I'm worried that if I make it my work and my living 24/7, it might turn it into a chore / source of stress. What advice would you give me for deciding whether to make a career change towards applied languages? Is it okay if I say a couple of things about that, Claire?
Absolutely, yeah.
So I think I was definitely the same. And yeah, I mean, I think if you're going to work in a field that you're passionate about, that can be an issue for some people in some circumstances. I think another way of looking at it is that if you love it, you do get to do more of it, and you do get paid to do it, which is great. And if you love it anyway, I think there are also a lot of other aspects to potentially working with languages that go on then behind the scenes. So just because you have, qualified, you'll still be carrying on your CPD, you'll still be carrying on perhaps watching the programs that you watch in your source language, and that kind of engagement with your language doesn't really stop. And definitely shouldn't stop. And I don't think that I would see that as part of my work. I think I still see that as my hobby, which is obviously a really lucky position to be in. I think anything that can be work can be a source of stress at times, and I think that's just unfortunately how it is. But I think that could definitely be managed. So making sure that you work in an area, in a specialist field that you do genuinely enjoy, will definitely help it not to become a chore. So I would say try it. I think if you're thinking about having this career change, it perhaps has potentially been something that's been kind of niggling away for a long time. And if you're passionate about something, getting to do it on a day-to-day basis, that's really great. So I would say, yeah, keep up, make sure you don't forget about the things that you really love about languages, and hopefully you can integrate that into what you're doing. Maybe you absolutely love subtitling and that becomes your niche. Or maybe you absolutely hate subtitling, so you never offer that service. So it really is, you are a freelancer, and I think it sounds really kind of trite, but it does have free in it. So you are really free to define kind of what direction you want to take your career and your future in. I don't know if you want to add anything, Claire, at all.
No, I think you've covered that. Somebody has asked, is it expected that translators starting out do lots of pro bono work to gain experience? That's from Janet. And I'd just like to say something about that. I think there's an assumption that that's how you get started, but I don't agree. I think it's fine to offer pro bono work to charities that you might feel particularly passionate about, maybe to some local historical sites that might be near you that you just, you're interested in and you want to help them out. That's fine, but do always ask for a reference. You might do some work for Translators Without Borders on a voluntary basis, and you can obviously add that to your CV. But when it comes to businesses, I would never recommend that anybody would work for free, that anybody would provide free translation or interpreting services for a business that should be paying. So I don't think you should expect to do lots of pro bono work. I don't agree with it at all. I don't know what you think, Olivia.
No, I think there's just so many different ways of kind of starting out, and it is entirely up to you what pro bono work that you do. I would say if you do, make sure it is for a cause that you do genuinely care about and you do genuinely want to help, as opposed to just saying, oh, you know, I just really want to get some experience. So I think my opinion would be that it should be a, you know, kind of charitable organisation or cause that you're passionate about. And in that regard, then it's really kind of your choice. And you're not losing out. Whereas I feel if you're starting to provide, you know, companies with unpaid services, that's a really grey area. And I would encourage against that. Someone else has asked, on average, how long does it take to find a sense of stability after starting? And I would say that just varies enormously. And it probably also depends on how much time you're kind of spending on your marketing, how organised you are and how dedicated you are to that. So it really could take, definitely not the answer you wanted to hear, but any amount of time, depending on how much you go for it. I would say that if you really, really go for it and you are in a position where you're able to dedicate your working days to kind of marketing and developing your business, within a few months, you should start to see some regular clients.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think if you focus all your efforts into making these applications, whether it's to agencies or direct clients, tailoring them, making them personal, not just sending them out willy-nilly, then you will start to get inquiries. And that can be frustrating because sometimes they might not go ahead straight away. Quite often people are just sort of sounding you out and they haven't quite finished the original document, so it's not quite ready to send to you. But it is more of a snowball effect, so you have to have a bit of downtime. But conversely, you might be really lucky and you just hit the right person at the right time, and they happen to have some massive project that's going to go on for a while, and you're busy straight away. But in that instance, don't stop your marketing, keep going, because at some point that job will finish and then you'll need something else to do and you'll need a different client to take you on. So never stop your marketing, even if you're only just contacting a few people every week, just keep it ongoing. And as Olivia said, don't forget about your past clients that you've built up, because people leave, people go on maternity leave, they go on holiday for ages. So you need to keep in touch and find out from the people that you've worked for in the past as well. Don't let them go cold, keep them nice and warm and loving for you.
Yeah, I was asked in the Q&A, I'm also passionate about this kind of career. They also want to be earning big bucks. Is that possible as a freelancer, and what are the typical upper limits and lower limits when it comes to pay? I don't think there's really any kind of typical range in terms of pay, and what really complicates it is that people work kind of, you know, drastically different hours as well, and also different languages can command drastically different rates or significantly different rates. So I think that's really hard to say. Ultimately, is it possible to earn big bucks? I think you can earn really good money as a translator if you market your service as well, and if you provide a really good service and have clients coming back to you. Also, you are running a business, so it depends where you want to take that business. And in that regard, I would say the sky's the limit, because, you know, you could choose to take different sort of business decisions or diversify what you're offering, you know, work with others. So you could expand your business as much or a little as you want. One really interesting thing about freelance translators is that for a lot of people, it's kind of a lifestyle business as well to some extent. Due to, I'm not sure if that's quite the right word, but due to kind of the convenience of the role and getting to kind of do something you're passionate with on such a flexible basis. So I think for a lot of freelancers, their earnings could be limited by either the time they are willing to work or want to work or are able to work. So that's another factor, you know, how much time are you willing to kind of invest in this, and what are your goals? So yeah, I mean, go for it and
good luck. I think Mary Eve has raised another question about raising rates. So she says, how do you approach raising rates with clients if you've been working with them for a long time and are stuck on the same rate? And I think that's a really good question. And I think even when you're starting out, you need to be mindful that you are at some point going to be putting your rates up, and you might be being paid different rates by different clients, which is fine. But you're always going to be thinking, I want to earn more. If you're working for someone else, you'd get a pay rise every year. You have to take control of your finances and not keep working at the same rate for 5 years. So I always recommend put them up by a tiny amount, a couple of pounds here, a couple of pounds there, every year minimum, because then your client will absorb it. They don't want to find a new translator. They love working with you. It's not going to make any difference if you just put it up by a tiny amount. And then in 5 years' time, you're going to be charging them a lot more than you were today. So I think that's really important. What do you think about rates, Olivia?
Yeah, it's a tricky one, and I think everyone has a bit of a different opinion, but I do agree with Claire that I think sort of almost setting a policy both for yourself and for your clients where they expect you to increase your rates a little bit every year, or whatever kind of, I would say, is a reasonable time frame for that. What I would recommend is, if you're saying, right, I'm going to increase my rates by 15% this year, just to pluck a figure out of the air, I wouldn't do that with all of your clients at once. I would kind of hedge your bets by doing it by so you can kind of gauge the response, but also, of course, you do want to still be working with some clients if they do decide it's too much for them. I think it's also fine to stick to your boundaries. So if you raise your rates and not all of your clients are able or willing to pay your increased rate, I think that's also fine, because you need to work with people that are able to afford what you need to charge.
Yeah, and it just opens the door for negotiation, and you'll probably be very pleasantly surprised, because you'll work yourself up into this, oh, they'll stop using me, I can't put my rates up. Then you have the conversation and they say, that's absolutely fine, no problem. And then you think, well, I should have done that ages ago. So, and if they say, I'm really sorry, we can't pay any more than we are at the moment, then you have that conversation with yourself about whether you love working for them, they're really lovely to deal with, they pay all your bills on time, so you want to carry on, or are they just a bit of a nuisance and you could spend your time somewhere else working for another client who pays more, in which case they might have to go to the bottom of your list of people that you want to work with, possibly eventually falling off altogether. And that's okay too.
Yeah, I was going to say that's okay too. And I think perhaps what kind of goes back to what I was trying to get across about feeling kind of icky or uncomfortable with sales. We perhaps are most critical of ourselves, generally speaking. So you're probably worried in advance that you're going to kind of mortally offend someone. They're more than likely not going to take it personally, and they probably have quite a few different translators, assuming this is an agency, quite a few different translators contacting them, also raising their rates by a similar amount. I don't think that people take it personally. And I do think that you need to be kind of polite but firm. And you need to approach the conversation of saying your rates are going to increase by this percentage or this amount, and make it really clear what your rates were and what they are going to be going forwards. And I think when you approach it with this is what it's going to be, you do open yourself up to, of course, there is an element of what if they say no. And so you need to, I would say, do it client by client, as opposed to just blanket email all of your clients and say it's going up, because it's good to gauge the response, but you also, of course, need to be prepared that someone will turn around to you and say, well, we're unable to pay that, we don't want to pay that, which is fine. That's entirely up to them. And like Claire said, you then have to decide for yourself, well, am I comfortable sticking at the rate that I was working at, or am I not comfortable, and is my time better invested back in my marketing and finding a new client to replace the time that they tended to take up in your schedule.
And sort of on that subject as well, Maria has asked, do you think the translation industry should have rates regulated? They seem to be quite taboo. And I think they are. It is impossible to regulate it, because like so many industries, you can find a translator anywhere in the world. Everybody has different language combinations, different circumstances. If they're living in different countries, they might be able to work for lower rates. And it's very difficult to regulate against that. And it's where I think as individual freelancers, you kind of have to take control of the situation yourself. Don't worry about the people that are paying low rates, just forget about them and concentrate on the people that you want to pay you the rates. I think there's too much conversation in some ways about, and too much sort of complaining about the lower rates. Just forget it, move on. That will always happen. It happens in every industry. If you look for a photographer, you can find one that will charge very little and one that will charge more, and a load in the middle. And it's very much a matter of you deciding which way you want to go. So clients have that choice too. They're always going to look on the internet. They're going to find somebody cheaper. If you find yourself up against somebody who's cheaper, so if a client says, well, I can get it done for half the price in another country, just let them do it, be very polite and gracious about it. And I can guarantee that half the time they'll probably come back to you and ask you to sort out a problem that they've had. So don't lose hope, but also don't get tied up with the lower rates. Work out what you need and stick to what you want to earn, and find those good customers that are out there. It's a real growth area. And now that we're going into a recession in the UK, people are going to be looking overseas. They're going to be looking to grow their markets over there, because it's not going to be happening over here. So it's a good time for translators. Don't be disheartened.
Oh, sorry, I've just muted myself. I think we need to finish up now, as it's 2 o'clock, but please do feel free. I'm so sorry we didn't get actually a chance to answer every single question. So if you'd like to direct it to either one of us, I've just seen someone's asked about charging German to English translations. Please just feel free to drop me a message on LinkedIn, drop Claire a message on LinkedIn, and we'll do our best to help. But thank you so much, everyone, for your time today. Thanks for attending.
Thank you. Thanks so much. It's been really fun, and I hope you found it useful, and maybe chat to you again in the future. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.